I just want to thank everyone so much for tuning into this panel conversation today on what I know is just an incredibly relevant and timely topic. For those of you who don't know, I'm Ashley Szofer. I lead external relations at STEM Connector. We are a professional services firm committed to building a diverse and sustainable STEM workforce. So this content is incredibly relevant to us, and we are very excited to have such great leaders across our network who you're going to hear from today, who are committed to this work and internships in particular. Given the rapid shift in the way that we conduct business and education right now, we know that so many students have been left without the internships that they relied on, both for financial benefit, but also to hone their skills for the future workforce. So this simultaneously leaves industry leaders without the opportunity to build their traditional sources of talent and create pipelines they rely on for success and sustainability. And so we know, of course, that the first priority for business and education leaders as all of this started to happen in this new COVID-19 world we're living in was to certainly figure out how to maintain their regular work in a virtual world. And we know that we cannot let these, but we also know that we cannot let these critical opportunities shift away from the workforce. And that's why I'm so excited to be able to share this conversation today. With lots of in-person classes, projects, other engagements being lost to the current and future workforce, continuing internships is even more important than ever before for the budding workforce to really learn both employability skills and hard skills that come from often direct exposure and engagement with industry, especially for the STEM workforce, where we actually know that research says that only 11% of business leaders report feeling students are prepared with the skills they need when they're coming in. So with internships, while internships may look a little bit different this spring and summer and coming year, I do believe that with the right guidance and preparation, companies can shift to virtual internships that provide substantial impact, both for the interns themselves, but also for the employers without losing these crucial opportunities. So this conversation that you've joined today is going to feature insights and guidance for how we can shift from on-site to virtual internships and feature perspectives from a corporate leader, a content expert, and a training expert who are going to share how they are pivoting their regular operations in real time to be responsive to this need while ensuring that internships are providing tangible, meaningful on-the-job experience. So just FYI to people who are tuning in, we will be recording this conversation and sharing it outside. So if anyone needs to jump off, or if there are additional people that you want to share this with in your networks, we will certainly be expecting you to share this with anyone you like. It'll be featured on our YouTube channel as well as in follow-up communication. If everyone has been muted upon entry, just so that we can control for noise, but we will open up for Q&A. And so if you have questions later, you can use the chat feature on the Zoom as well as use the raise hand feature, and we can call on you during that time. Additionally, if you have logistical questions, we do have people on staff who can be responsive to those in real time. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and dive into the conversation and introduce our panelists. So we are joined here today by Sonar Thekdi, the Vice President of Operations at VMWare, Ashwin Bharath, who is the CEO of Revature, and Dan Horgan, who is founder and CEO of CoLabL. And we'll just go ahead and dive right into the conversation. So I just want to start by having you all introduce not only your name and title and role, but why internships in particular are an important aspect of your work. Ashwin, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot, Ashley, for having me here. And like Dan and Sonar, it's a pleasure to meet you. So this topic is extremely near and dear, right? So let me quickly give a quick one-liner about Revature and give you a little bit background about me that will make sense to this topic. To begin with, Revature is one of the leaders when it comes to employing entry-level programmers. So most of what we do, and my background is technology, so my response is going to be tech-related mostly. So to understand Revature's business model, let me give you how I started my career, right? So when I graduated from an engineering college with absolutely zero programming background. But the company that hired me trained me extensively for like 4 months. And from having zero programming knowledge, I became one of the top programmers of the firm. And they had like 60,000 programmers back then when I was there. So that transition became the founding thesis of like Revature's business model. So what I mean by that is, in US, right? So we have 350,000 entry-level needs that is required, programming needs is required every year, right? But we just have 70,000 computer science majors coming out of it. On the other hand, you have a fantastic set of alternate supply chain of talent based on aptitude who can be great programmers. So we have more of an opportunity gap than a skill gap. So what we do is fundamentally identify these talent based on aptitude and attitude, provide them the skills, and put them into the best job. So that's how Revature's model solves the opportunity gap. And I firmly believe what we do is, in big essence, is a version of internship, and we have the technology and platform for it. So there is a lot that we do completely relates to the topic that you have brought us here for.
Thank you so much, Ashwin. So we're so excited to learn more about some of that work and how you are creating that in the virtual world in particular. Sonar, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. Thanks for having me. And it's great to be here with Ashwin and Dan as well. By the way, I love STEM Connector and I love everything that it stands for. Personally, super passionate about getting more and more women, as well as all other underrepresented communities into tech. I personally myself have a degree in computer engineering, and I could relate to some of the things that Ashwin was talking about, right? So I'll talk a little bit about my job, but let me give you a little bit background as well. So as I was going to school, I went to San Jose State University, and I've been completely financially independent since I was 15 and a half years old. And part of that was I carried a job throughout the school year to really put myself through college, and didn't really have the opportunity to go and take summers off and do internships and really build that part of the muscle of having both the skills to transition into the workplace, but also have the opportunity to really network and learn about and start to build relationships. So my first exposure to even internship discussions started when I was a member of SWE, Society of Women Engineering, and attended the SWE conference in Boston, and I got to meet people who were in the industry and was just so intrigued and excited to see what different paths they had all taken in their careers. And it was very foundational for my own career journey throughout the years. Fast forward to today. So as Vice President of Operations for the entire R&D organization at VMware, in some ways, what I'm responsible for doing is really focusing on driving how we operate and what are the best ways for us. One of the key things I do, I sit on our D&I Council, and I believe that internships are really, really critical stream of getting new talent into the company on a regular basis. I did this even at my former employer, and I've seen that in my day-to-day work, as we think about where the new talent is going to come from, this pool is super critical. And therefore, lots of times what we see is you'll see large companies are hiring hundreds, if not thousands of interns globally, and then converting them and giving them an opportunity to really learn along the journey. And so, yeah, that's why I'm interested in this as well.
Thank you so much, Sonar. I think your personal story and passion are so incredible and inspiring. It's a great honor to be working with you on this work too. Dan Horgan, I know you have some similar personal passion, so why don't you go ahead and share some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ashley. And thanks so much. I'm so excited to be a part of this discussion too. So as Ashley mentioned, Dan Horgan, CEO of CoLabL. Our core mission is to expand networks, develop talent, and accelerate growth for individuals and organizations. I think in terms of context of why and how our work is grounded is it starts when I was 18. I started a nonprofit in Pittsburgh, where I'm from originally. And as an 18-year-old trying to start a nonprofit that was centered largely around youth voice and helping organizations that went to work every day trying to meet the needs of young people understand the value and the importance of having young people at the table, both shaping the strategy as well as implementing the solutions. And so, experiential learning was such an important part of building out that nonprofit for a year and a half, not getting any funding from any known funder in the Pittsburgh market because I was an 18-year-old. And proving my way really showed me, again, the importance of project-based learning. It showed me the importance of the network and who you know and who can help open doors and be an advocate for you. And so, that's really the heart of our mission at CoLabL, is to help young people engage in those types of project-based learning experiences. Similar to what Ashwin said, like going to school and going to classes is one thing. Applying the work of what you are learning in those classes in a real world setting and producing results, and sometimes failing and learning from those failures, as well as sometimes succeeding and frankly developing solutions that employees at the company may never have developed themselves, is such a powerful learning experience. And so, for us, that's why this pivoting to virtual internships is so critical. We can't just say, program's over for the summer. Let's regroup in the fall. And I think there's far too many smart people and great resources out there to fill in the gap.
Absolutely. And Dan, I think you actually just touched on a perfect lead in to the next piece of this conversation, which is we've now talked about why internships in general are important. But when the whole world shifted to virtual, we realized that virtual internships are also going to be really important. What was kind of a moment for each of you that you realized, okay, what can we do about internships? Especially because none of you in your actual day jobs was internships a critical element of your work. So Ashwin, why was this something? I know I heard from you a couple of weeks ago that this was important and was in a great place to be able to triangulate all of these leaders who were thinking about it. But what kind of was the moment and why virtual internships for you, Ashwin?
So see this, if you think about it, right? Like currently 80% of entry-level jobs in US expect some kind of experience, right? To me, that itself is an oxymoron, right? Like entry-level jobs and experience. I don't understand like what's the logic behind it, but that's the reality we are in, right? And if that's the case, and if you cancel internship, where would the students go? Because if you don't fix this problem, we might permanently displace the students who are graduating for the next 3 years. So it is very, very important that we have to come and fix this problem, right? And to begin with, US does not have an apprenticeship program. It does have, but it is at a very, very minor level, right? But we do have an internship program, but that's still broken, but we do have something, right? So we have to take this, we have to take this opportunity, especially the pace at which this is happening, to elevate ourselves and to fix it, right? So I will give you an example. So with the nature of our business, we work with pretty much the CIO's office of large companies, right? Like we think about it like we work with like directly and indirectly 5 out of the top 10 Fortune firms, right? So I was talking to several CIOs after what direction things are going to go. So they all mentioned this work from home model, this virtual world has literally increased the productivity of the programmers significantly, right? And in some areas, it has doubled the productivity. So with that fact, they are thinking about how can they permanently shift 50% of the programming to be work from home for enhanced productivity. If that is happening in mainstream work, why can't we apply the same solution coming into internship? There are plenty of options available. There are plenty of ways that we can do it. So in my mind, it is very, very essential now out of any time that we have to get into this virtual internship. We have tools available. The world that has changed into virtual is leading us the way for us to give a perfect solution for internship. I believe there cannot be a better time for us to find a solution now than later, actually.
Absolutely. Love that. So well said. Sonar, how about you? I know that this was, you have a very interesting story, I think, about how this kind of came to you.
Yeah. So, you know, clearly we were at my company, we're fortunate, we just kind of didn't really bat an eyelid to the point that Ashwin was making around productivity continues to be, you know, still we have lots of productivity measures we're looking at and not a challenge. We recognize and realize this is important. So it was, we were in the process of shifting to a virtual internship. Well, but it became very personal for me about 3 weeks ago. So I have 2 grown children. I have a 20-year-old daughter who's a junior in college. And about 3 weeks ago, she came into my room and she was pretty distraught. And she said, "Mom, guess what? I just found out that, you know, she was going to be working at a firm in LA and found out that they actually ended up canceling their entire internship program. And so her internship got rescinded." And so she's like, "This is a bummer. What am I going to do in the summer?" And as I was starting to talk to a lot of her friends and everyone who's kind of, you know, the buzz was getting, you know, much, much larger. And they were all talking about how this is just a challenge. And to the points that Ashwin already made around, you know, if you can't have the experience for these students as they're in school and have the opportunity to really learn during this very critical time, it really creates a gap for them. So I was thinking, what can I do to really help these students? And I did a LinkedIn post. Look, I am not a connector like Ashwin and Dan are. I do have a network, but I thought, you know, let me just do a post. And so I did a post on LinkedIn and I said, you know, here are a few things. If you're a student and you're interested, let me know. If you're a company that's looking to think about, oh, we have some projects, or if you're a nonprofit that says we have some projects that we could actually use interns for, then let's connect. And I was thinking a very simplified version of a crowdsourced model of like just doing, you know, almost like Tinder, where you're like either, oh, I'm interested, swipe left, not interested, swipe right, like making it that simple, right? And within 24 hours, I mean, I literally had to update my post to say no more students, because what I found out is, and since then, there are like thousands of people who have reached out to me, both personally, privately, as well as on my post. And the reality is 95% of those reaching out to me are students who have all had their offers rescinded. There are a few people, and we'll talk about what are the different elements of virtual internships, but a few different things that surfaced in this. And one of the people who reached out to me was Leslie. And so here I am. I think that the need is real. Especially for students who are recognizing that this is super critical, and they're feeling a lot of stress and anxiety of not being prepared and being robbed of this opportunity.
Well, I can say that I feel honored to be in the virtual presence of a viral sensation right now. You know? So maybe it's not the latest TikTok dance, but I think it's for a good cause that you got thousands and thousands of responses to your LinkedIn post, Sonar. And so then Dan, so you kind of started this piece about virtual. What about for you? What was the moment where you were like, we have opportunity and resources, what can we do for this?
Yeah, I mean, it was a couple of things. One is, so we do a lot of training for intern managers typically, because in all honesty, a lot of intern managers are often voluntold that they're going to be managing a group of interns or an individual. And so we do a lot of training around how to effectively manage those interns in the workplace. And that starts with building a relationship with them before you start delegating transactions or to-do lists. And so with that, and then we do a lot of work with internal mentorship programs, both with current talent as well as future talent. And so when I started getting calls a couple of weeks ago from companies that started saying, look, we're probably canceling our summer programs, or we've already canceled them, you know, I kind of went into panic mode, to be completely honest. I was like, you can't cancel these programs. Let me work with you to figure something out. And so we've pivoted one of our mentorship platforms that we've worked on with a couple of clients to being more of a virtual platform to develop project-based learning assignments to match with networks of employee volunteers from companies and targeted career pathways. And then to really gamify the process so that students are earning points and recognition and achievements as they complete the tasks of different projects, and unlocking further opportunities to connect with senior leaders or to connect with additional project-based or experiential learning opportunities. The one thing I just want to, I shared these questions in advance. I wanted to share something just quickly for everybody who's on about sort of the why behind this work. And I'll call it the 4 E's, just so we can try to keep it memorable here. And that is, number one, and to me, the most important at the center, is equity. So for a lot of students who get their offers rescinded, as Sonar said, this is a game changer in terms of their career development and in terms of just their economic growth, right? So when you think about not getting a paid internship experience, not building their network, and not building a portfolio out over the course of the summer, already puts them behind. So that's first and foremost. The second is experiential learning, right? So to put you back in time, to Ashwin's point, where you're just going back to classes, but you're not seeing the application of that classroom work in the real world setting, and testing and learning, right? Your processing of that course. So when you're actually doing it, you're actually learning it twice as much. And so you're able to apply that learning in a much higher level moving forward in your own career path. The third is empathy. So we're having a lot of empathy for students, which is so important. But we also, I think, have to have empathy for some of the companies that I've talked to that have furloughed or had to lay off their employees about something that we're all going through at this time, right? And so thinking about companies that have furloughed or laid off employees who at their heart want to provide some sort of experience, but just don't know how they can do it with the capacity that they have or the resources they have. I think that's when you look at what Sonar was talking about. There's a spectrum, which we'll get into, but a spectrum of ways that they can still stay engaged with the people and the resources they have. And then lastly, I just think is entrepreneurism. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're creative and you want to solve problems, this is a big problem to solve. And at the end of the day, there's not one organization, there's not one platform or program that's going to fill the gap. And so the world needs all of us. coming together to figure out how we can play our part in advancing that solution.
Thank you so much, Dan. And I think you're hitting something that we are even seeing already in the chat box. And I'm actually going to go, because a person just asked a question that I think is really aligned to a question we were already going to talk about, especially for you, Dan. So what is the kind of training we should be providing for companies, given that this is, to use Anne Aragon's word, uncharted waters for them? And I think you're uniquely in a position to be able to provide that. So what is the kind of training that we need, and what is the advice that you have for leaders who are going into this new world?
Yeah, so I think there's 4 core ingredients in terms of training. At the center, if you will, the bullseye of the 4 ingredients is relationships. So I think we have to strengthen relationships with ourselves. So as we're all trying to navigate this water, we have to increase our own self-awareness around what we're going through and how we're processing it, and then how we build connections with students and our colleagues to try to facilitate these types of experiences or programs. But so outside of that, I think the 4 components are project-based learning, a project that can take a day, a project can take a week, it can take 6 weeks, 8 weeks, right? We can scale those projects up and down based on, the goals, the resources, the capacity of the people at the table. But project-based learning in the sense that we've got a clearly defined goal with clearly defined tasks or steps to go through, and then a final part. So for us at CoLabL, we phrase it around, there's the research, there's the creation of whatever project you're doing, and then the presentation. So you're gathering feedback throughout that process. The second is really around career exploration. So a lot of us don't know what we don't know. So when you're an intern, being able to have exposure to different career pathways or different aspects of a career is so important. And so integrating those elements in and realizing you don't have to do it on your own. There's a lot of great tools, resources, and programs out there that you can plug right into that component. The third is really around skill development. So linked to project-based learning, assume that students don't know how to do the project and tie it to some of the free courses and programs. I mean, there's so much out there. You've got Accenture's Skills to Succeed Academy, which has tons of fantastic skill building courses available. You have ASU's EDGE program, which also has a ton around customer service development, leadership development, all free online programs. And even LinkedIn Learning has a ton of LinkedIn Learning courses that are now offered free for job seekers. And so combining those things to say, you need empathy to do this project. Here's the 2 courses that you should take to be able to effectively complete that project. And then last is all around the network expansion. So how are you integrating opportunities, not just for the day-to-day sort of project manager or the core team of employees that you're working with? How do you network that young person? So lining them up for informational interviews, connecting them for virtual career mentoring programs or career panels, any of those types of activities, those I would say are the 4 core ingredients around training companies up in the space.
Thank you so much, Dan. I think that those are super important. And I know you just mentioned a lot of really great organizations, and I just want everyone to know we will be creating a follow-up email that will include links to some of these great resources that are mentioned here, as well as contact information for our panelists, so that you could follow up directly with any of the questions we're not able to get to today, because I know that that's going to be some of the questions, is how can we access some of those great resources that are out there and that you guys are talking about. So building on that, Ashwin, so Revature is already very much in the computer sciences workforce space, and they are very much at the forefront of this crisis, to a point you made earlier. They are people who are solving the challenges that are in front of us. They are working more than ever on some of these challenges. But so how can a platform like that be utilized for a positive internship capacity, where young people can be learning both the on-the-job hard skills, but also some of those employability skills that would allow them to be those problem solvers in the community using those resources?
Absolutely, right? See, again, like the pace at which this pandemic has hit the world and the pace at which it is making people change is phenomenal, right? Technology, like adapting technology in our work, it literally changed how we worked, right? But this pandemic is going to permanently change the way we work, right? So what we are seeing is, whether it is higher education or enterprise or any industry for that matter, people are trying to adapt towards a dumbbell model, a dumbbell approach, a balanced approach, right? So to me, it has to be a platform, should be a combination of both machine intelligence and human intelligence combined, should be the right one. And to Dan's point previously, what training is required, he gave some really fantastic set of things, right? The 2 things where the company should work in very high collaborative manner is an intern. One of the things that they learn, especially going and working in the office, is how to work as a team, problem solving. All these things are like learned indirectly. That should not be missed. Collaboration and culture are very, very important. And that's where the human intelligence comes into it, right? And you can do a lot of automations, like in terms of like how to keep them motivated. That was one of the biggest issue of virtual internship was motivation, how to keep that, proper guidance, giving a proper structure. All those things can be brought through the machine intelligence. So in my opinion, you have to have a proper dumbbell approach of human intelligence and machine intelligence. And there are plenty of solutions available now, but sadly, not some of these solutions, most of these solutions are a student paid model. What I mean by that is they expect students to pay from it. To me, it has to be the opposite of it. It has to be an employer paid model. Students who are looking for internship should find it very easily accessible, more importantly, affordable. When I say affordable, it has to be zero, right? So take, for example, our Revature Pro platform. So that platform is highly used on a public-private partnership, where it means is to the universities, we act as an aggregator of enterprises. To an enterprise, we act as an aggregator of higher education. Through that platform, we have several pathways. And these pathways, one of the uniqueness of these pathways are these are real-time projects. So our goal is to give them applied learning, not just theoretical learning, right? So integrating these pathways, integrating these projects with applied learning would be the core of establishing such a platform.
Thank you so much, Ashwin. I think you're making such incredible points. And Sonar, I'd actually love if you could build on that a little bit, because I know one of the things that you brought up was, what are some of the challenges of experiences that interns would get in person that they're not going to get virtually? And how can we create some of those benefits and those opportunities in a virtual world that go beyond just the specific project that is the team building exercise, for example?
Yeah, definitely. So, as I mentioned, once the post went viral, the thing that it was very interesting for me. So my network, I don't know, whatever number of people I have, a couple of thousand people, 95% of those that actually responded with an interest. When I posted, I said three things. I was looking for students who might be interested, who either didn't have an internship or got rescinded. I asked for people or companies that might have projects that they could use virtual interns for. And then the third thing that I brought up was, if there were people in my network, and I know almost everybody in my network has something unique that they could actually share that the students can learn from. A huge part of an in-person internship experience is really having the opportunity to meet with very, very different sets of people and really interact with them in an environment where you can ask questions and really learn from them, right? So I asked for speakers for a speaker series. I was envisioning that potentially I could host a speaker series maybe once a week or once a day, even depending on how much interest there was. And people could just, in this world of Zoom, it's super easy to set up. So we could just do that. And what I found is 90% of the interest came from students who were all saying, I am interested in a virtual internship. There were a handful of people who actually responded, who were companies like what Dan is doing, like what Ashwin is doing, who are enablers for other organizations and corporations to actually bridge between the students and the work itself, to really be the plumbing, if you will, in the middle to enable that. And then I had, I don't know, maybe 100 or 200 people who've actually come in and said, I would love to volunteer and speak to these students. I can talk about machine learning. I can talk about IoT. I can talk about, what is happening, the latest in stem cell research and all those kinds of things, or even leadership skills and things like that. And to my surprise, there was not a single post from anyone that said, or a comment or even a reach out from anyone that said, here is a project and here is what I'd like to do for students. And I want to really challenge everyone out there to say, and look, I totally understand. And to the point that was brought up earlier about companies actually having furloughs and layoffs, and it's a tough market out there. So I want to definitely empathize with that. But I also want to challenge people to think about, look, a virtual internship is going to cost you less in most situations than if you had an in-person experience that you were planning for the students. And I'm talking strictly about tech, the tech industry. That's the one that I'm familiar with. But if you think about the students coming in, whether it was providing living expenses, whether it was providing, whatever other perks you're providing to interns these days, right? A lot of that is going away. And I want to challenge people to say, can you think of even taking 1 or 2 or 3 students and potentially even adopt them, maybe not a full internship, but provide them with an opportunity to really think about, here is what an experience is about when you get to be in an environment where you're working with these students, right? So to me, that's a really, really important part of this experience, which I would really want to challenge each one of us to say, like, one of the things that you do with Million Women Mentors is like, you're taking the pledge. I want to put this out there and say, can everyone pledge to support 1 or more interns in whatever way that you can? If you can do that with a paid internship, nothing like it, that would be the best outcome. But if not that, like, this is not a zero-sum game, guys and gals. Let's try and see, if you can't do the full 12-week paid internship, could you provide them with a project? Could you connect them with somebody who might have something? Or could you take on the role of a mentor? And I really would love for us to create something like that where everyone comes in and pledges an intern. That's it.
I love that, Sonar. I love the specific call to action, because obviously, we have a few hundred people on this webinar today who are invested in this and interested in learning about ways to do it more. And I think what's really important about this is none of us are standing here or sitting in our homes, actually, pretending that we have all the answers. None of us are able to say, this is exactly how you do this, and every company is going to work for it the same. We know that there are people who have furloughed employees or who've had to downsize, and they're going through serious struggles right now. But there is something that everyone can do. And so I like that aspect of, maybe it's that you're a mentor and you sign on to do that, or you do create a project, or if there's a way to scale back what your normal internship program was. And then we do tie them into some of these online resources or a speaker series. There are certainly opportunities to do this work, even if it's not at the grand scale that maybe some of your internships are used to. And I think that ties well into our final point before we open it up to questions, which is, while a lot of this is negative and the world is going through some very, very, very serious challenges right now, there are also some benefits that come with this opportunity for us to be in a virtual world. We've heard about equity. There are a lot of opportunities that maybe can come from a virtual internship that couldn't come from only having on-site ones. And I just love to hear from each of you a little bit. Dan, we can start with you. What do you think are the potential benefits to actually being able to offer virtual internships instead of on-site ones?
Yeah, I think virtual internship experience, it removes a lot of barriers that are typically in place. So even if you just look at geographically, right, being able to engage kids in rural America in internship experiences with your company that you may not have ever come in contact with or connected with is an incredible benefit to diversifying our talent pipeline and creating opportunities for them to bring their unique experiences and perspectives to the table and apply it to whatever the project is that you have scoped. I also think that, there's a lot of work. I work a lot in the D&I space, and I think there's a lot of work and a lot of conversations around creating more inclusive workplace cultures. I see this as an opportunity to move more from talk and into action and start to really think tangibly about how are we going about creating those more inclusive spaces. And I, from my background, believe so strongly that it's about relationship building. I've seen lots of companies, nonprofits, schools, they create, especially now working virtually, has created a stronger sense of empathy and a stronger sense of understanding for the reality that makes us all complex human beings, right? And balancing everything that we have going on in our lives. And so I think the opportunity is, how do we practice more of that empathy in the way that we design experiences or programs to engage not only our existing talent, but also our future talent. And I think that lends itself to fulfilling the D&I mission or pledge that a lot of companies have made, and making it much more actionable with some really solid measurable results, to be honest. And so I would say that. And then lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't just add something. I love, Sonar, what you were putting out there as the challenge. And I want to add to the challenge, but I'll put part 2. And that is, like, a lot of what I've been talking with students about is be part of creating the solution, and don't wait for the solution to be presented to you. And it comes, like, my background has always been like, I created a nonprofit because I didn't see it in my community. And if I see a problem, I want to figure out how to solve it. And so I've said to students, if you want to stand out right now in the talent pipeline, say to the companies that sent you the offer that said, sorry, we can't run a program, what can we do to work with you this summer to fulfill your mission? And that mission might be tied to their corporate social responsibility. Maybe they're a company that has historically engaged in hunger relief work. How can we become part of your project as a company to use technology in a creative way to address the gap right now between surplus food on farms across America and the people who need it, who are waiting on highways to get into food distribution centers? Engage yourself in creating the experience, pitch the solution. Sometimes I think on the employer side, and this also happens on youth side, but on the employer side, we don't see 10 feet in front of us because we're just trying to get through our day to day. And if a student can challenge you to zoom out for a second and invite themselves in to co-create the solution, it's an incredibly empowering student engagement opportunity. And I'll be honest with you, it's going to totally translate the employee engagement experience too. That employee that you engage as their coach, their mentor, their manager, is going to feel a much stronger sense of purpose in that relationship building moment. And it could be game changing for you as a company in the way that you approach not just your social impact work, but maybe core parts of your business as well.
100%. I absolutely love that, Dan. I think, as many people as you can have be part of the solution, that always makes somebody more invested in it. So whether that's the student or the employer, having them be part of the solution is critical. So I love that. Ashwin, what about you? What are some of the benefits to a virtual internship that you can see?
I see like plenty of benefits, right? So just to begin with, see the success of this webinar, right? Imagine if you have to host such a webinar. These are exclusively designated for conferences, like the planning you have to do, bringing people, everything. In a short period of time, Sonar was able to create like a viral article. Then you are able to put it together. More than 200 people joined, and you made me wear a nice shirt, actually. So, so it's, if you think about it, right? Like the benefits of it completely outweigh. This is a simple example. Similarly, like to the previous point of Sonar, right? Like think about it. The location alone, right? Now companies have access to talent anywhere in the country. Just because of the location constraint, there might be a fantastic talent somewhere else. They might not be available here. You can do it. And Dan brought in a very, very good point on inclusion. I would like to add one more thing to it, which is diversity and inclusion, right? If you take Revature, 1/3 of our graduates are first generation graduates. That's purely because of the like a combination of virtual model that we do, right? So I will give you why that is important for companies, right? This is not just for social reason that you have to bring in diversity and inclusion. I have 2 boys, right? My first son, he is completely logical. The second one is like the exact opposite of it, right? So if I have to develop an IT project, I will not have 2 of my elder son or 2 of my younger one. I'll have a combination of that, right? The reason is diversity is not just about diversity of ethnicity or skin color, but diversity of thoughts is very important, right? Because diversity of thoughts leads to diverse approach, and a diverse approach leads to innovation. So it's very, very important. Companies have to take this seriously. This is a fantastic way for you to create very successful, innovative projects, right? And they will think about consequences. You don't have structure, you don't have guidance, motivation, collaboration, culture. But when I look in deeper into it, right, these problems are already existing in today's internship model too. These are not newly created problems, already there. You have to find a solution for it. Why don't you find that solution which is applicable for the virtual side too? So in many ways, I see this, but I would like to summarize one thing. The biggest beneficial is companies financially, it is a huge benefit for it. Again, since my background, our business is in tech, I'll give you an example. Entry-level programmers at tech industry spends anywhere between $120,000 to $150,000 to create an entry-level programmer to be productive. Imagine if you have to take a similar internship approach. You can do that at a fraction of a second. And these companies hires like thousands and thousands of people a year. Imagine the cumulative effect of it. The financial benefit alone for the companies will completely outweigh any other consequences that this can throw. To me, I can see like plenty of opportunities. It is very, very important that we get into it. And I can keep on adding to the benefits, but I'm going to stop here. And since it is challenge time, they both asked for a challenge. I'm going to give one more challenge. So which is, I think a lot of people in this country now, in spite of all the joblessness, we are still in a position to create one internship. Just do that. Like if you're in a position where you can create one virtual internship, do it. And I will be more than happy to help or like either through our platform or mediate or provide ways, because so far we have created over 5,000 programmers and we have enough experience to guide people in this manner. So let's take that as a simple challenge. Each person just take one and collectively that's going to make a big difference. So that is the challenge I would like to add to the great challenges got from Sonar and Dan.
Thank you so much, Ashwin. We'll include those challenges in the follow-up email and see how many people we can hold accountable to them. Sonar, before we open up to questions, what about you? What are some of the positives you see to the virtual world and the opportunity for internships here?
Yeah, thanks. You know, the great benefit of going after everybody is just to say everything they said before me. But I truly mean that, right? I mean, to me, the point that Dan brought up earlier around creating, I think this really makes the world much more equitable and available to everyone. Whether, I mean, if you have a computer, you can go and get an internship. And I'm starting to see in the panel lots of questions around how do you actually, you know, work on getting paid? What are thoughts around unpaid internships? And, you know, one benefit that I'm starting to see is also to the points that were made earlier, which is, of course, it's about inclusion broadly. It's about the diversity of thought. It's also about driving a sense of belonging and really drive engagement broadly. So use this also as an opportunity to say, people who you may not traditionally think of as managers, if you are a company that even has 2, 3, or 5 people or 10 or more employees, and you want to give them an opportunity to learn what it means to manage people or provide mentorship, this is a great opportunity to give them a virtual intern and go and do this. And, you know, Ashwin and Dan are two, but there's so many other companies who are actually providing that infrastructure layer, if you will, around how do you actually even set up an internship. I've personally talked to startups, several of them, and happy to share those resources that actually say, you know, if you want to just enable this, here are some tools that we have. We can create presence for you. We can help you kind of put the projects to the students, how you manage them, how do they do their presentations, how do they do, so there's lots of resources. If we can, I think this is an opportunity for the world to truly come together. That's what I'm seeing is the most positive thing coming out of this is we're all engaging in this conversation, whether you're students, whether you're employers, or whether you're just a citizen who wants to think of how can I help. Everybody's putting their foot forward to do whatever it takes to help others. And I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Sonar. And I would just add to that this is a benefit of the virtual conversation, even that we're having now, that technically wouldn't have needed this to happen to the world, right? Like the idea that we could do a speaker series and tap into our extensive networks of leaders and have them provide a daily talk or whatever that is. We didn't need this to happen to do that, right? We could have always done it, but maybe it's the same thing that I FaceTimed with a friend in Denver that I could have been FaceTiming all the time. I live in DC. there's no reason we couldn't do this, but we use quarantine as an excuse to do it. I think that this is bringing that opportunity. Like, there's no reason we can't be virtually connecting people to these new opportunities through this, which is so incredible. And so thank you so much, everyone. I want to open it up to questions now that we're getting in the chat box. And so one of the questions that I saw earlier actually was a question around, especially for younger people like high school students, what can we be doing to support them who might not have had the opportunity to really learn time management, which is really an important aspect of if you're going to be remote, if you're going to be doing something with flexibility, how can we ensure that young people who haven't really learned some of those things like time management and project management, how can we help them be successful with some of these virtual opportunities?
So let me start with that, right? So to begin with, I will not fully agree to the fact that like young men and women don't have time management, right? Like my kids, like they completely moved to Zoom. I am really surprised the way they are like time sensitive. So my little one, 8 years old, he tried to do a printout, which he can't, and he messed it up. So he was just 5 minutes late to the class. He was really crying for it, right? So I believe they have not given the opportunity. Then definitely they would need some help and guidance for it. But time management to me, it's quite easy in today's world. In today's tool, there are plenty of tools that can really help them to do it. But to this question, I also saw one more question about the high school students again. So normally internship, primarily thinking about internship, people immediately think it is for students in post-secondary education, right? But these virtual options completely eliminates the fact that birds of same feathers flocks together. It's not just students from post-secondary education. You can bring in high school students. You can even bring in little bit older employees like career changes. So this gives you an opportunity to go for a diverse pool of it, especially for like high school students who are really looking for experience, and that can help them to decide what should be my college career path, what should the major I should take. I think there are really a lot of tools available, and in your follow-up email, I can definitely send you some suggestions that will be helpful there.
Great.
Can I add two things to that? So I want to build off what Ashwin said. So one is I had a chuckle when I saw the question about project management, time management. So when I run a lot of internal mentoring programs for companies, one of the things that we ask people to do is prioritize what they want mentorship around. And I can tell you that from professionals that are mid-career and beyond, time management and project management are often two of the top areas that people are still looking for support and guidance and coaching around. And so I agree. I think that we don't give young people especially the opportunity to prove themselves in those spaces, or the resources necessarily to provide guidance around how to apply those things. But a lot of adults don't practice those things either. And so together we can learn, right? We can learn and teach and learn together in the process. The second thing I just want to highlight in terms of when we think about audience for these programs, a lot of our conversation is on higher ed and kids coming from schools. I do a lot of work with community-based programs as well. And so being really mindful of kids that are currently disconnected from school or traditional employment pathways that are in community-based programs, whether they're funded through federal dollars or state, local dollars. A lot of those programs, in all honesty, don't have currently built into their models these types of experiences. It's a lot around resume writing, mock interviewing, basic skills, but it's not about project-based learning and the expansion of professional networks before you go to the job fair or before you get sent off to an interview. And so if we can include those particular organizations in this conversation as well and create opportunities for them on their path, it'll achieve a lot of the things I think we're all talking about as well.
Absolutely. I think this is a question that just came in that I think is interesting, and I think it speaks to some of the things we've said are challenges certainly to creating the virtual internship experience. How do you recreate an office experience or an office environment while still maintaining the virtual internship experience? How can they get a sense for what that looks like? And it's an interesting question because, to be honest, all of the office environment might change for all of us moving forward. So none of us really know what office work looks like in 3 months or a year. But I think it's an interesting question about how do we recreate what it's like to have that collaborative office environment?
Yeah, so maybe I can start off and then others can add to it. So as I've been talking to my network around what they're doing with virtual internships and a lot of the companies that are continuing to do this, some simple things. I think everybody has access to Zoom. Most companies are enabling their employees to use these technologies, right? So whether you're on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or WebEx or whatever, actually providing and you know, using the video feature as much as you can. It's surprising how many of us actually thought that video was probably too much of a hassle and didn't really use it. I can attest to that, right? And now it's like something you use by default in every conversation. So definitely use video. The second piece of advice that I would give is something that Dan said earlier, which is reach out to others, not just your manager or your mentor, but actually go and build, you know, just by you initiating a conversation or, you know, networking with someone, most people are actually really willing to help. They'll actually take this as very entrepreneurial and appreciate the student actually reaching out to them. So I want to encourage students to actually say, take that first, you know, step in reaching out to somebody and trying to build that connection. And then lastly, I would say is, you know, some things that we learned when many of us were younger, which was actually doing, you know, either a weekly progress report or some way of like winding down your week with something that says, here is what I was able to accomplish this week. I know there's so many BI tools. I was talking to somebody on my team yesterday around how much time are we spending on what sorts of conversations. Just even think about how you can provide that sort of an update to your mentor, your leader, and really show your entrepreneurial skills or some things that I can think of.
I'll take a quick minute on that, Ashley. So see, for me, one of the key things, especially when you are simulating job environment, is it's very important that you have to help them related to things that they know, right? So we have a program called PDP program. It's a professional development program, and that's core purpose is for them to simulate or to understand how a real job happens, what are the various roles, people involved, right? As you can see in my background, I'm a big Star Wars fan. So how we do it is we have two themes, right? One is a Star Wars theme, another one is a Marvel Comics theme, right? So in a typical development team, we say that, hey, there are a lot of roles. For example, you'll have an enterprise architect role. And we have a small, like a plush tie, Master Yoda tie. Master Yoda is the enterprise architect. You have issues, you need a solution, how to integrate with other system, you goes to him. Obi-Wan could be your Scrum Master. So initially, it is easy for us to know it, but it's tough for them to think about it virtually in their head. So we come with mechanisms where it's easy for them to relate it to, understand it. In that manner, we felt that not only their understanding gets deeper, but their ability to remember and reproduce when it is required was much far good. And in that manner, we found the efficacy to be really good there, actually.
Actually, can I just add two things real quick? So one is just start with what so many companies that I work with have already developed their virtual remote working guidelines, tips, suggestions in lots of really creative ways. So it's not like a rule sheet. It's like, here are tips and suggestions to just be more effective at the work. And so I would say first and foremost, just leverage what has already been created. Two is LinkedIn Learning has a bunch of free courses online for remote workers that they've made available for free that can help you think. You can even provide those to your interns to help them through the onboarding process. And then third, I'll just go back to a point I made earlier, is have the student interns actually create their own set of guidelines. So guidelines for effectively working remotely and building their network in a virtual environment. Put that out to them as a challenge. And I guarantee you'll be surprised at what they come back with, and you'll find it helpful and applicable across probably all aspects of your business.
Absolutely, absolutely. One question I have dials back a little bit to do a plug for STEM Connector's own research, but last week, I think it was last week, I don't know what day it is anymore, but we released a data set on world talent in America as a commonly overlooked talent pool where industry leaders are looking for talent. And one of the pieces of data we got from Pew Research Center is that actually only 63% of rural households have access to broadband internet. So I think that there are still opportunities, even if you don't have internet access or broadband access. What are some of the opportunities to keep internship opportunities alive, even without a strong internet connection in this virtual world? What are some of those opportunities we can provide for individuals from those backgrounds?
I can jump in and just say one thing, just anecdotally. So I've been running nonstop virtual career mentoring programs for the last 5 weeks. And I can tell you the very most important ingredient is a willingness to adapt and solve the problem. Because every time that I'm running these programs, I was just doing one with Cisco on Tuesday night. We had 100-some mentors and young people from all across the country. Young people, I give my cell phone, text messaging me, telling me that their internet connectivity cut out. They couldn't connect to the WebEx room. Immediately being able to give them the cell phone number of the mentor that had been recruited and immediately connect them. And so again, it goes back to access and equity. Like, we have to be mindful of the fact that not everybody has all the tools to make these things work. So we have to meet people where they are. And if the best option right now is to connect us by cell phone, great. I had another student who said, literally through their program team member, their cell phone died. They couldn't connect. I connected them on LinkedIn and they have a meeting tomorrow afternoon. So you have to be in the mindset of finding the solution and not getting bogged down by the obstacles.
Exactly. And as Dan said, connectivity is more important than broadband connection, right? As long as you have connectivity in some sort, that to me, that's more than enough for you to adapt and do, like, as an example of what just Dan said.
Yeah. One more question that came in is actually just, and I know Sonar, you've talked about this a little bit, and we talked about it when we were kind of prepping for this conversation, but how do you create a sense of community among interns when they are remote and maybe not able to work on teams, not just for your own company, but between schools and some of those pieces where you rely on to build those communities and those networks? How can we maybe create some of those experiences in a virtual world?
Yeah, I think I was just looking at, again, the chat panel, and one of the things that maybe this post will go viral too, I don't know, but I would love to just reach out to the network and ask for people to share best practices or creative things that companies are doing. Like, I know that, the welcome package that companies are putting together, they're setting up teams of, there's lots of games that you can play online. I know my teens or young adults are spending a lot of time online connecting with their friends, creating a sense of, bringing people together who don't naturally work in groups in the same team to actually connect that way. The other piece that I brought up, which was around actually bringing speakers to meet with the students. Another one is to really have the concept of like hallway conversations. I know one of the things that somebody in my team has done was introduce this concept of virtual breaks. And literally, it's like you set up a break room sort of an environment, and people can go in and out of a Zoom meeting and literally just come in, have a chat. They could be drinking their coffee, and you provide that sort of a virtual happy hour, virtual coffee break, sort of a setup for the students to come in and talk to others about their own experiences. And then really create, I think Dan mentioned the presentation part at the end of the internship, but maybe even providing a platform for them to share their experiences throughout the internship. So every week on Friday, you can have an open hour, open house, and people can come and talk about 10-minute lightning talks on what they've done this week. That, I think there's many different things you can do.
Awesome. I know we've also got some people who are sharing some things on the chat function. So we are happy to, we're going to be saving this chat. And as we've said, we'll be sharing out all this information in the follow-up. I want to be respectful of time, and it is now the end of our time together, but this has been just such a fantastic conversation, and it has been so wonderful just to connect with all of you on this work we're doing. And for everyone that chimed in and wants to learn more about this work, to the point that's been made throughout this conversation, we are all learning while we're going, we are experimenting, we're creating solutions together. And there's no person that we don't want to have be part of this conversation. So I would like to think of this panel conversation as just the beginning of an open dialogue of how we can create these meaningful opportunities and do so in an ongoing, sustainable way. So we will be sharing a follow-up email with contact information, as well as so many of the resources that have been mentioned, both on the conversation and those shared in the chat function. And we look forward to working with all of you and continuing this conversation. So just thank you again to Ashwin, Dan, and Sonar for your time today and for everything you're doing to be thinking about these virtual internship opportunities. It's an honor to be working alongside of you.
Thanks a lot, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley. This was fantastic. Good to see you, Ashwin and Dan. See you all later. Bye.
Everybody stay safe and healthy.
You too.